assault will usually mean a desire or knowledge that someone's rights will be invaded. Notice I use the word knowledge interchangeably with the phrase substantial certainty, because when the law of torts talks about knowledge, it means knowledge to a substantial degree of certainty. That's a very important phrase, substantial certainty. Those are the words you have to use when you're talking about knowledge in the case of intent. All right, once again, in torts involving intentional invasions of the person, intent will usually mean a desire or knowledge that someone's rights are going to be invaded. On the other hand, in torts involving invasions of property, intent does not require knowledge that someone's rights are going to be invaded. Intent requires only the desire or knowledge that the particular thing, piece of land, automobile, stick, whatever it is, the particular thing will be affected by defendant's conduct. All right, we're ready to start looking at some specific intentional torts. We're going to look at 4 intentional torts involving invasions of the person. These are battery, assault, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, as to those first 3, battery, assault, false imprisonment, in most states there are also crimes by those names. And if you've heard anything at all about those crimes, I'm going to suggest that you try to forget it when you're thinking about torts, because the similarities between the tort named battery and the crime named battery may just be enough to confuse you about the differences between them. So let's just talk about the torts called battery and assault. These are really 2 separate torts, but Dean Prosser, the dean of all torts professors, once said that battery and assault go together like ham and eggs. Let's look at them very briefly, and then we can talk about why they go together like ham and eggs. First of all, we're going to be defining every tort that we discuss in terms of essential elements. Essential elements are parts of a definition. You're going to use the essential elements as a kind of a checklist for issues when you discuss any particular tort. So if I tell you, for example, that battery is defined in terms of these essential elements: first, intent, and second, harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff. That's the definition of battery: intentional, harmful, or offensive contact with the plaintiff. You're going to look for 2 kinds of issues. First, did the defendant have the necessary intent? Second, was there a harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff? Now, this is starting to get a little confusing, because what we're really talking about now is intent, remember? But there's more to battery than intent. And if we're going to be looking at intent in terms of specific intentional torts, we're going to have to look at their other elements as well. So this is when, traditionally in a torts class, you learn about battery and assault. Battery, intentional, harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff. Assault, intentionally inducing the plaintiff's reasonable apprehension of harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff. Well, when you look at those 2 definitions, maybe you can see why battery and assault go together like ham and eggs. Battery is a kind of a touching of the body. Assault is a kind of a touching of the mind. Battery, intentionally making harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff. Assault, intentionally making the plaintiff apprehensive that harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff will occur. So, they're like ham and eggs. But there's another reason why Prosser said that battery and assault are like ham and eggs, and that's because in both battery and assault, intent means the same thing. Now, I told you a little bit earlier that every tort had its own special definition of intent. The truth is that battery and assault share a definition of intent. Intent in a battery case, intent in an assault case means that the defendant desired or knew to a substantial certainty that his or her act would produce harmful contact with the plaintiff, or offensive contact with the plaintiff, or would make the plaintiff feel apprehension about harmful or offensive contact. Now remember, battery involves making contact with the plaintiff. Assault involves making the plaintiff apprehensive of contact. But intent is required in battery just as it's required in assault, and in both cases, intent means the same thing. A desire or knowledge that there would be harmful or offensive contact, or a desire or knowledge that there would be apprehension of harmful or offensive contact. I'll give you an example. I shoot a gun in your direction, planning to scare you by shooting the bullet over your head. In other words, desiring to cause apprehension. But my aim is bad and the bullet actually hits you. I've committed a battery because I intended to cause apprehension and I did cause a harmful or offensive contact. Similarly, I desire to hit you with the bullet and I aim it at your head. But my aim is bad and I miss. And you become horribly frightened when the bullet goes past you. So, I intended to make a harmful contact. I accomplished putting you in apprehension of a harmful contact. I've committed an assault. Now let's look at battery a little more specifically. Battery is intentional, harmful, or offensive contact with the plaintiff. We know what intent means, a desire or knowledge that there will be harmful contact or offensive contact or apprehension of contact. The second element of battery is that there was a harmful or offensive contact with plaintiff. So let's look at each part of that element, because each part of that element may turn out to be an issue on an exam that you take, or on a discussion in the classroom, or when you're in practice on a real problem. Harmful. Harmful means causing injury. That's simple. If you're taking an exam, the facts have to tell you whether there was an injury. If the facts don't say there was an injury, then there was no harmful contact. Offensive means unauthorized, unpermitted. Contact is offensive if the plaintiff did not permit it, but the law applies a kind of an objective standard here and goes on to say that in order to be offensive, contact must be unauthorized by the plaintiff and the kind of contact that the reasonable person would not have authorized. So, for example, if I come up behind you and tap you on the shoulder to say, "Pardon me, can you tell me how to get to Carnegie Hall?" You know what the answer is? Practice, man, practice, right? But if I come and tap you on the shoulder and I ask you for directions, you may not have authorized me to tap you on the shoulder, but since the ordinary person in our society usually is willing to be tapped politely on the shoulder to have his or her attention attracted, then the chances are the contact I made will not be regarded as offensive. Offensive means unauthorized by the plaintiff and likely to be unauthorized by the reasonable person. Now, a special situation exists if the reasonable person would authorize a tap on the shoulder, the ordinary person would authorize a tap on the shoulder, but I happen to know that you don't want to be tapped on the shoulder. You have a special sensitivity to this tap on the shoulder. If I know about it, then when I tap you on the shoulder, I have made offensive contact, even though the ordinary person in your shoes might have permitted the tap. So an exception is made for the defendant's knowledge of the plaintiff's special sensitivity. We're going to see that exception time and again as we look at the intentional torts. Battery is intentional, harmful, or offensive contact with the plaintiff. Well, what do we mean by contact with the plaintiff? Obviously, if I touch you, if a part of my body touches a part of your body, I've made contact with you. Obviously, even if no part of my body touches you, but I cause something else to touch you, I've made contact with you. If I shoot a bullet at you or throw a stone at you, or if I order my hitman to shoot you. Remember The Godfather? He had his own personal hitman, Luca Brasi. He'd say, "Luca, I want you to go get that guy." Well, if Luca went out and did it, Luca might be committing a battery when Luca shot me. But the Godfather might also be committing a battery by causing the harmful contact with me. But you know, it's even possible to make contact with the plaintiff when nothing touches the plaintiff.